James W. Murphy says, let's see, at what point do the continual executive orders, lawlessness, and actual desecration of our great republic from the people in charge in D.C. result in the end of the republic? What are the actual indicators to look for when we as citizens say America has fallen? When are we without recourse to the laws anymore? You know, all the things I enjoy most about watching Ted Cruz at that speech, especially, was that Cruz wasn't talking politics. He was talking about lawfulness. He was just listing example after example after example where the Obama administration simply violates the law, and when they're called on it by the courts, they simply ignore the courts. He listed a case where I think it was something about do religious institutions have a right to determine who they're going to hire, and apparently the Justice Department was saying no, they don't. That's not protected by the First Amendment. And Ted Cruz said Elena Kagan, who basically brought coffee for Barack Obama during his first term, was just said, I can't believe you're actually arguing this. The lawlessness of it is unbelievable. It's absolutely breathtaking. Recess appointments. There is precedent and constitutional wiggle room, certainly, for the president to make appointments when the Senate or when the Congress is in recess. And as Ted Cruz pointed out, this happens many times, and Barack Obama wanted to make some appointments. Congress was not in recess, but he declared that it was. He just declared that it was and made the appointments anyway. Supreme Court said this is unconstitutional. It doesn't matter. Those people those appointments still stand. Lawlessness. And, of course, the ultimate lawlessness that we're seeing these days is the lawlessness of Obamacare, right? I mean, the structure is pretty clear. You pass a law like Obamacare, and the law has constraints, restrictions, timetables, deadlines, regulations, and so on. That law is then passed, even if it's by the shadiest of means and the narrowest of margins and the most, the most partisan vote, and basically in the history of the Republic for anything of that magnitude. But it's now the law. And so, since it's the law, it's the law. The president doesn't simply get to say, oh, I've decided to change part of the law. This isn't going to take place for another year. That part of the law that talks about the employer mandate, I'm going to let that go too. And I'm also going to change some of the dates and times. It's not how it works. If you have a law and you want to make changes to the law, if you want to push these things back a year, let's say there's a perfect good reason that Barack Obama wants to push some of these mandates back a year. And what you have to do is you have to go and make new law, and it has to pass Congress, has to be signed by the president. When the president simply dictates what parts of the law are going to affect when the president can dictate that this particular piece of legislation with a date on it is no longer valid, I've just arbitrarily decided to make it happen a year later. When the president dictates what parts of the law are to be followed and what laws the Justice Department will enforce and then what laws they won't enforce, when the president dictates that, he becomes a dictator. What do you say? He is a dictator. He dictates law. And he simply waves his hand and he does it, which is yet another example of the fact that we don't have 1,000 problems in this country or 500 problems in this country. We just have one problem in this country, and the problem in this country is there is no press. Period. That's it. That's all. So, there you go, James. If there was a press, this would be outrage, and it should be outrage. It should be outrage by both sides. Do the liberals and the progressives really want this kind of dictatorship? Of course they do. They love dictators. They love dictatorships. They love Mao. They love Lenin. They love Castro. They love them. They love them. They loved Chavez. They loved oh golly, what was his name? Sandinista, Nicaraguan guy. I forget his name now. But they love them. They love dictators. They love the idea of coercing other people what to do, because then they can have power over people that they cannot get on their own through voluntary exchange of goods and services. They just want the ability to coerce people to do what they want them to do. Of course they love dictators. one of the reasons they're so against voter registration laws and so against IDs is because they don't want fair elections. They just want to stay in power forever, because then they can dictate things. They're power-mad lunatics. And those of you who have nuclear weapons ought to nuke them. There's another call for genocide for you, for those of you who may be watching. And by the way, the fact that we can't have our own personal nuclear weapons is frankly offensive to me, deeply offensive. They're arms, and I have the right to bear arms, and if I can afford a nuclear weapon, I should be able to have one. Moving on.